Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai, Ashta Sakis Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Nrsimhadev Bhagavan Ki Jai, Panchatattva Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Readings from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, Chapter 14. This disappearance of Lord Krishna, verse 41. Kaccit tvam brāhmaṇaṁ bālam kam vṛddhaṁ rogiṇaṁ striyam śaraṇa-upasṛtaṁ sattvam nātyākṣīḥ śaraṇa-pradaḥ kaccit tvam brāhmaṇaṁ bālam kam vṛddhaṁ rogiṇaṁ striyam śaraṇa-upasṛtaṁ sattvam nātyākṣīḥ śaraṇa-pradaḥ. Brāhmaṇam bālam kam vṛddhaṁ rogiṇaṁ striyam śaraṇa-upasṛtaṁ sattvam nātyākṣīḥ śaraṇa-pradaḥ. Kaccit tvam brāhmaṇam bālam kam vṛddhaṁ rogiṇaṁ striyam śaraṇa-upasṛtaṁ sattvam atyākṣīḥ śaraṇa-pradaḥ. Kaccit tvam bālam kam vṛddhaṁ rogiṇaṁ striyam śaraṇa-upasṛtaṁ sattvam nātyākṣīḥ śaraṇa-pradaḥ. Kaccit tvam brāhmaṇaṁ bālam kam vṛddhaṁ rogiṇaṁ striyam śaraṇa-upasṛtaṁ sattvam atyākṣīḥ śaraṇa-pradaḥ. Okay, word for word. Kaccit, whether, tvam, yourself, brāhmaṇam, the brāhmanas, bālam, the child, gam, the cow, vṛddhaṁ, old, rogiṇam, the diseased, striyam, the woman, śaraṇa-upasṛtam, having approached for protection, sattvam, any living being, na, whether, atyākṣīḥ, not given shelter, śaraṇa-pradaḥ, deserving protection. Okay. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai. You are always the protector of the deserving living beings, such as brāhmanas, children, cows, women, and the diseased. Could you not give them protection when they approached you for shelter? And purport. The brāhmanas who are always engaged in researching knowledge for the society's welfare work both materially and spiritually, deserve the protection of the king in all respects. Similarly, the children of the state, the cow, the diseased person, the woman, and the old man specifically require the protection of the state, or a kṣatriya king. If such living beings do not get protection by the kṣatriya, or the royal order, or by the state, it is certainly shameful for the kṣatriya or the state. If such things had actually happened to Arjuna, Mahārāja Yudhiṣṭhira was anxious to know about these discrepancies. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this verse was spoken by King Yudhiṣṭhira to his brother Arjuna. We are reading in this chapter how after Yudhiṣṭhira sent Arjuna to Dvaraka to hear news of Lord Krishna. Somebody speaking. That he was waiting for a long time for Arjuna to come back, and while waiting for him, he was observing all the different signs, and all of them were inauspicious. And this is part of Vedic culture, that based on auspicious or inauspicious signs, one can see what is going to happen in the future. So he was observing how auspicious animals were passing him on his left side, and inauspicious animals were circumambulating him. And he noticed that in the families, family members began to quarrel, and also that even among husband and wife there was disagreement, which was something unheard of in previous ages. And then when Arjuna came back, he saw that he is morose and dejected, and that he lost his bodily luster. So he's inquiring him what had happened to him. And we hear these questions that King Yudhiṣṭhira asks, and we already know that this is not what happened actually to Arjuna, that he is morose because Krishna left. So one may wonder why these questions are there in the Bhagavatam. Sometimes it happens that we read Bhagavatam and we wonder, why is this story in the Bhagavatam? It happens sometimes. So the reason why all these questions that Yudhiṣṭhira asks is that we see that these questions indicate they are continuation of the signs, of the previous signs that he observed what is going to happen in the age of Kali, and these questions are indication that these fears that Yudhiṣṭhira had, this is all going to happen in the age of Kali. So this means that the king or the state who are supposed to take care of women, children, cows, and brāhmaṇas and the diseased, that they will not be able to take care of them. The importance of this is that Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to instruct kings how to rule. And we see that King Parikshit, he was the ruler, and Shukadeva Goswami was speaking to him in that regard as brāhmana advising a kṣatriya. So he already left his post, but the whole Bhagavatam is spoken as an instruction for kings on how to rule. So we learn from this that the duty of a king, the dharma of a king, is to give protection to its citizens. And this was understood that the king should be a pious king, and that his authority as a king is given to him by some higher authority, and this higher authority is the Lord. So in India, people understood that dharma means the law of the Lord, and that the dharmic king is representative of the Lord, and that he is doing his dharma by protecting people, and then people are doing their dharma by being obedient and loyal citizens and observing dharma. So there was a connection between the state and the religion, where the ruler of the state would represent religion, and people were meant to follow what the religion is telling them to do, and not follow what religion or dharma is telling them not to do. This was commonly understood. And we see that everywhere in the world, until fairly recently, until 300 or 400 years ago, this was also a common understanding, that the world was divided among different ruling dynasties or monarchs, and they were all propagating some kind of religion. They were all representing for their citizens, that they were representing higher authority. And then the religion which the king chose to follow became the state law. And whatever this religion was encouraging to do became the law, and this also the king encouraged, and whatever the religion was prohibiting to do became against the law, and it was punished. So therefore people understood that by following religion or dharma, they will get good results, they will go to heaven, and by not following religion, they will have bad results, and they will be punished either in this world or after they leave body. So today, this is not the case. That is why I wanted to make this point, how in the past this was very common, but today it is not like that, and the governments are secular, and they are not endorsing any religion. The religions are free to do their preaching, but not that they are being endorsed by the government. And because this dharma is not being followed, and the laws are secular, people, they don't really know how to live their lives. They don't know what to do, they don't know what not to do. but then they are living their lives in some way, and we see that the industries today and the technology, they are the ones who are guiding the lifestyle of the people, and that whatever new technology comes, this technology, one of the consequences of introducing new technology is that it changes the lifestyle. And we learn in schools, for example, that any new technology that comes means advancement and progress of humanity, and that we are evolving as a species. So therefore we learn how people in the past, they used primitive technology, and therefore their life was primitive. And then, for example, people would drive in chariots driven by horses, so this was considered primitive, because now we have cars, and this is much more convenient, that we take petrol from the ground and the car is faster, and doesn't require as maintenance as animals, so this is much more advanced way of living. And similarly, we use many machines that use electricity, and this is considered more advanced than using any technology without electricity. For example, electric grinder is considered more convenient than using some old type stone grinder. So there are many examples. And we also have in our own lives observed how our lives have changed in so many ways. Those of us who are old enough can still remember what was life like without internet, and that we were sending mails by writing them by hand, and you would have to put the letter in a post box, and then you would have to wait for some time for person to receive the letter, and then he would write back, and then you would have to wait for the letter to come to your post box. And today this is inconceivable, because we just write some message, and the person who is the recipient of the message gets it immediately in 1 second. So these are all considerations how technology is advancing, and because technology advancing, our lives are becoming better. But if we think that our lives are so much better, if we ask ourselves, are our lives much better today? I would say, in my own case, that they are not necessarily better, they are just different. And that just like we used to live differently before, now we live with this new technology. But that didn't solve any of the problems that come with life, and that Srila Prabhupada, he mentions often that none of these technologies are solving the problem of disease, old age, and death. So the progress is there materially, but philosophically and spiritually nothing changed. That the problems are still the same. And then these different technologies are guiding the way we live. But there is no philosophy behind these technologies. They are just making profit. There is no explanations by the technology itself about what is life all about, or what is the aim of life, or what is the purpose of life, or what happens after we die, or what should we do to get to be rewarded in the future, or what should we not do to avoid suffering in the future. So the technologies, they just offer some practical solution And they can be used for good purposes, and they can be also used for bad purposes. So in and of themselves, they are not indication of any progress concerning the real goal of life. And what is this real goal of life? So we learn from Srimad Bhagavatam that it is Krishna consciousness, devotional service, self-realization, surrender to the Lord's lotus feet, and ultimately realizing how in this world everything's being created and destroyed, and we are not part of this world. We are eternal beings, and our best interest is to, by this process of devotional service, by process of religious life and spiritual practice, that we should be able to reach the eternal world, the spiritual world, where Krishna resides with his associates and perform his pastimes eternally, and then there is no disease and death and old age there. So this is what life should be about, and this goal of life, this purpose of life, this should be our motivation about how we organize our lives. This should be our priority. And all this technical advanced technology, this is useful so far as it is making our lives simpler, and so that we can dedicate ourselves to spiritual life. But they are not the goal themselves. They are just a useful tool. And the philosophy and the dharma, the religion, this is what most of us should be concerned about as much as possible, most of the time. These are the real concerns in life, and not how to solve the problem of, Prabhupada says, eating, mating, and feeding, and defending. Eating, mating, yes, defending. What is interesting for me in this purport that caught my attention is that the brāhmaṇas are always engaged in researching knowledge for the society's welfare work, and that both materially and spiritually. Because it seems that we think brāhmanas are usually priests. We think of brāhmanas as priests doing yagyas, doing puja, doing arati, and we also think of them as teachers. Brāhmanas are teaching shastra, they are also teaching any other subjects. But brāhmanas are also scientists, and they do research. So when I thought about this, I realized that being a scientist is not something special, that only some people, some smart, gifted people who are employed in some institutions, they are scientists, but the rest of us, we are just receiving products or just using whatever solutions that they come up with for us. Being a scientist is normal for everybody. And when Srila Prabhupada, he was asked, is this what you are preaching, some kind of new religion? He would often reply, no, Krishna consciousness is a science. And in his book we also read that he says Krishna consciousness, it is a science. So science means that we have some hypothesis, and then we make experiment to see if this hypothesis is correct. And then based on our research, we conclude, yes, hypothesis is good, or no, hypothesis is not good, Or that maybe we should try the hypothesis again to see in a different way, to see if it can be adjusted, corrected. So we do some kind of research. And after some time, we gain experience. And then we say, yes, this was correct hypothesis. It is working. Or no, it turns out it is wrong. And this is such a simple and natural thing to do that even we do it every day without even considering. And for example, something as common as cooking is actually a big science, I'm finding out. And then we can see that sometimes there is a recipe and we take the recipe as hypothesis and we make experiment, we try to cook according to the recipe, and the result is not always as we expected. This happens. Did it happen to anybody except me? Sometimes the rules of nature, they don't behave the way we expect them, and then food gets burnt, or it's not cooked enough, or there's something wrong with the utensils we are using, and we are learning from this experiment. And for small children, also exploring the world is they also do it as a science. So this was interesting for me to meditate how actually brāhmaṇas, they are doing this research work for the benefit of everybody, and then they come up with all these different knowledge about how to do things. But what they don't do research about is things that are written in the shastras, in the revealed scriptures, because they accept the Vedas as authorities coming from the Lord. So there is no purpose of doing any research to find out how the creation of the world was made, because we learn this from the Vedas, and we accept Vedas as a scriptural authority. So this was also common understanding in the past, that there is a reality which we experience with our senses, there is a reality which we see, which we hear, which we can touch. And then there is also some other reality which is not available to us. And that this reality becomes available through revealed scriptures, and then we accept it. So this higher reality is the realm where there is a supreme authority, the Lord. And then different traditions, they have different ideas how this higher reality or absolute truth, how he is defined, what are his characteristics or the lack of characteristics. And then there are different ideas. So any religious system has this understanding that there is our material reality and there is some higher reality. And this higher reality is not available to us through experimenting and doing research, but we have to accept this higher reality from authoritative sources. So also this question, what is the aim of life? What is the goal of life? Or how to make what is the perfection of life? This was also a question. And how to make life perfect? This was asked in we read in Uddhava Gita that Uddhava asked this question to Krishna. What is the perfection of life? And then Krishna said, interesting, wonderful, good question. And this question was also asked before by King Yudhiṣṭhira to Bhishma when he was on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, dying in his arrow bed. So And then Krishna quotes Bhishma in this Uddhava Gita. I found that really endearing how Krishna is quoting his devotee when being asked to give instructions on religious principles. So then he says that Bhishma Dev said that instructions about various religious principles, he said that those that lead to devotional service to the Lord, those are the real religious principles. And then Uddhava got confused and he asked another question. Actually, there are few verses he's explaining why he's confused. So I would like to read those verses. Uddhava asked Krishna, according to Vedic literature, the superior and inferior varieties found in the human social system varnashrama are due to pious and sinful modes of family planning. Thus, piety and sin are constant point of reference in the Vedic analysis of the components of a given situation, namely the material ingredients, place, age, and time. Indeed, the Vedas reveal the existence of material heaven and hell, which are certainly based on piety and sin. So this is common understanding that by doing what the Vedas advise us to do, we can achieve good results and go to heaven, and by avoiding doing those activities, we go to hell. And then he says, without seeing the difference between piety and sin, how can one understand your own instructions in the form of Vedic literatures, which order one to act piously and forbid one to act sinfully? Furthermore, without such authorized Vedic literatures, which ultimately award liberation, how can human beings achieve the perfection of life? So this is very indicative for the Kali Yuga age, because in Kali, like I said, the Dharma or religion is not endorsed by the government, so people have to find out about the revealed scriptures by their own merit, if they are wise, fortunate enough. Then Uddhava says, my dear Lord, to understand those things beyond direct experience, so like I said, he is aware that there is a reality which is beyond our direct experience, such as spiritual liberation or the attainment of heaven and similar material enjoyments, and in general to understand the means and end of all things. It is imperative that the forefathers, demigods, and human beings consult the Vedic literatures, for these literatures, being your own laws, constitute the highest evidence and revelation. So whatever the scriptures, the Vedas say, this is the law. We hear this, that Srila Prabhupada, he would say that his books are the laws for the Gauranga era for the next 10,000 years. Then we may wonder, how are they laws? They are just books. But looks like what he was saying, that because the government is not following the laws of Dharma, then I have to present Dharma as a law in my books. And then he emphasized in those books it's devotional service that is the superior Dharma. Although most of the Vedic literatures, they advise this. They have this consideration, what is pious and what is sinful, and then they say you do what is pious and you avoid what is sinful. But Kali Yuga is a special age where this gradual process cannot be followed simply, and that is why Lord Chaitanya and our acharyas, they present the highest truth of religion religious practice, and that is a devotional service. And reaching of Lord Krishna's lotus feet. So then the Uddhava also says, "My dear Lord, the distinction observed between piety and sin comes from your own Vedic knowledge and does not arise by itself. So we cannot do research and find out what is good or what is not good for us. We have to learn it from revealed scriptures that come from the Lord. If the same Vedic literature subsequently nullifies such distinction between piety and sin, there will certainly be confusion." And we see today, just as Uddhava says, there is confusion. So this was a beginning of the 20th chapter in 11th canto, and then for the rest of this chapter and in the next chapter, Krishna is giving answer to this question. And he says many nice verses. Yes, I want to read some of them. His answer is that basically there are three paths of advancement he's giving to the people. And one path is for people who are disgusted with material life. We see many people that they don't want to do anything with material life. They just want to withdraw, go to some cave, have nothing to do with society. They want to stay on their own, not be bothered, sort of. So for those people, there is jnana yoga. That is the path of learning. And then there are people who are very much inclined to fulfill their desires. They have many desires, material desires, so they want to fulfill them. So for them, Krishna says, there is karma yoga. So they can follow this path and they can still follow a religion. And then there is a third path for those who are neither disgusted, but they want to fulfill their material desires, and that is the path of devotion. And then he says, besides these three, there is no other means of elevation. So this is Krishna's program. And then this is the verse. Of course, he will explain that the path of devotion, this is the best path. So, and then in the verse 8, he says, if somehow or other, by good fortune, one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories, such a person, being neither disgusted nor very much attached to material life, should achieve perfection through the path of loving devotion to me. So this is the situation which is favorable for devotees, that if there are some material desires, it's okay. We are still advised to continue working, trying to fulfill those desires. But we should know that the aim is Krishna. So at the end, we will be able, through our religious practice, following Dharma, we will be able to give up those desires, and then we will be able to reach Krishna. And also for those, we should not be disgusted with material life, saying it's all bad, it's all worthless, I should just stay away from everything, and I should just on my own do study and avoid people, and then I will be able to, in this way, I will be able to reach the Supreme Person. It's a bona fide path, but it's not recommended by Krishna. So he compares this our situation in the material life to a bird who is residing on a tree which is being cut. So he says, without attachment, a bird gives up the tree in which his nest was constructed, when that tree is cut down by cruel men who are like that personified, and thus the bird achieves happiness in another place. So if we are not attached to our nest in that tree that is being cut, the bird is free to fly away, and the point is that the bird is not disturbed, and similarly that we should also not be disturbed, because we know that sooner or later the tree where our nest is being built will be cut down by the passage of time. So he also says, until one's mind is fixed in spiritual satisfaction, one should analytically study the temporary nature of all material objects, whether cosmic, earthly, or atomic. One should constantly observe the process of creation through the natural progressive function, and the process of annihilation through the regressive function. So this is in line with this purpose of the brāhmaṇas to be researchers, and it is advised for all of us to become researchers in observing how the material creation is becoming manifest, and then it dwindles sometime, and then it gets annihilated. So Krishna is advising this, that by observing this in the nature around us, we will be able to understand how this world is temporary, and this is important for understanding all the deeper spiritual subjects, which are out of our perception. He also speaks. Krishna is in this 20th chapter. He speaks about how it is very important for human beings to not get involved in sense gratification. We see that the idea of progress, like I said, in modern technology and modern innovations, their understanding is that if we increase our sense gratification, if we make our lives comfortable, we have everything so convenient and soft, nice furniture, and everything is available to us, so many products, that the idea is that if we enjoy our senses more, that this is progress of humanity. But Krishna says something else. He says, having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all material activities. Okay, so now he says, actually, it's okay to be disgusted. And knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment. So this is the condition we all find ourselves in, that we know that sense gratification is something we should be trying to reduce as much possible, but often it's not possible. My devotee should remain happy in such situation and worship me with great faith and conviction. So looks like what he is advising here is patience. So even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, and he sincerely repents such activities. So while the devotee is enjoying sense gratification, he is also aware, actually, I know that I should be thinking about Krishna and doing my devotional activities, and this sense gratification is just there until I am able to give it up. And what is also interesting, and what is the answer to Uddhava's question about what is wrong with just living a pious life, where you want good results in the future, or you want to go to heavenly planets. Why? And because this is something that the scriptures, the Vedas, they recommend. So Krishna says, this is verse 12. The residents of both heaven and hell desire human birth on the earth planet because human life facilitates the achievement of transcendental knowledge and love of Godhead, whereas neither heavenly nor hellish bodies efficiently provide such opportunities. So, looks like human birth is the best for achieving the goal of life, transcendental knowledge and love of Godhead. It seems that in heavenly planets there is so much enjoyment that this enjoyment is a distraction from spiritual life. And then in hellish planets there is so much suffering that this suffering is distraction from spiritual life. But on planet Earth it's equal. It's mixed. It's equally enjoyment and equally suffering. And this is, it seems, perfect environment for practicing spirituality, because while we patiently wait to become more advanced, we get to observe how neither the pious results and neither the sinful results are good for us, and that it is the devotional service which is giving us the result of attaining love of God, and which is enabling us to return to the spiritual world. I have a few more minutes. So another consideration that about the advancement of technology that I spoke about is that this technology is not considering that they are superior beings to us who are providing us with all our necessities. Somehow this was dropped out, although in the past everybody was aware of this, that they are powerful administrators of the universe who are providing us with our necessities. And Krishna also says in the Gita, Saha yagya praja srištva puravacha prajapati anena prasavishya tvam esha vo stvishta kamaduk. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, Be thou happy by this yagya sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. And then in the next verse he says, Devan bhava ya tanena te deva bhavayantuva parasparam bhavayanta shreya param avapsyata. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. And so we understand that for the previous ages, performance of sacrifice was doing yagya, worship of the deity. And in this Kali Yuga, the yagya recommended for Kali Yuga is Sankirtan yagya. And that is what Lord Chaitanya, he came to introduce and to spread. And that is why the Bhagavatam says in a famous verse, Krishna varnam tvisha krishnam sangopangastra parshadam yagyai sankirtana prayar yajanti hi sumeda saha. That in the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the name of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself, and he is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. So I'm not sure, I was told I should end by 9, but these 2 clocks are showing different times, so... okay, so I will end the class here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Okay, if there are some questions, just in case. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay.